you see. And you can type in Bible codes, future events into YouTube, and you will find YouTube videos. And there's a very good rabbi that does some very good studies on it. His language is a little difficult to understand because he's clearly Hebraic, and he's trying to speak broken English. But he knows his business, and so he does have some videos on it. But I tend to err on caution on that, and I recommend that. I have to, sir, to be honest with you. Okay, because that's the word, and I have to stick to the word. And so, our next topic is on a site of ours, and it is on the Shroud of Turin. Pardon me. And I want to take a little bit of time to discuss this, and I ask Brother JD's patience because I think he's heard most of it. But it's important that we discuss this today because it is the most physical, hard evidence, pardon me, that we could ever hope to have. It is the most remarkable thing that we have. And we're going to discuss it in great detail here for a moment. So bear with me because I'm going to try to run through it so I'm not, for the sake of time, I'm getting through as much material as I can. So anyway, it's on this page here, and I have to tell you about it outright, and so we understand each other. First of all, the first movie on it is under a copyright that I cannot violate, and it's from Performance Films Production in the UK. And the name of the movie is The Silent Witness. It's 1978. And so this movie then is available, but you have to click a link. If you load that page, it'll say this video is not available and cannot be played here. So I can't play it on my page. Okay, but if you click the link that says watch on Vimeo, it will open up a new tab and you can watch the 1978 original production, legal and proper, with no copyright violations and no problems. I've got their permission to do it that way. So you can watch this video from 1978. Now, in this video, it shows the Shroud of Turin, which was the burial cloth of Jesus Christ. And we get it from John chapter 20. And I'm going to discuss today two cloths instead of one because you've probably heard about the shroud. But I'm going to talk about two cloths today. And if you look in John chapter 20, you'll find that when Peter arrived in the tomb at the resurrection day, that there was two cloths. And that the first one is the Shroud of Turin. And it comes from, pardon me, excuse me. It comes from the name of the town where it's kept. And it's Turin, Italy, Turin. And it is a artifact of the Catholic Church, and God bless them for keeping this cloth. And so it goes back and is dated back and can be tracked from Turin, Italy, all the way to France, where it originally was owned by the Jacquenet family, and then prior to that, it was in the Byzantine Empire. And we know about it being there, and I'll explain that in a moment. And then prior to that, it goes back through to Jerusalem in 30 AD. It has, this botanist worked for Interpol, and he's a scientific, you would call it, today you would call it like if it was a crime, the guy would come and take the fingerprints and all that. And so, what do you call that? Pardon me. That's forensic science. So he's a forensic scientist in the 70s through all Interpol and all the federal European countries and things. He was an international expert on the subject. And so he identified pollen in the cloth, and pollen that was unique to the nation of Israel around 30 AD. plants that could only be found in Jerusalem in 30 AD. So he's got it tracked using the pollen forensic science to Israel, to the Byzantine Empire, which is modern day Iran, okay, and then also to France, where it was owned by the Chauvinets, and then when they passed away, they dedicated it to the Catholic Church, and it ended in Turin, where it's at today. And so now this cloth, first of all, there's an account in the Byzantine Empire text that says that the king of the Byzantine Empire was deathly ill, and he sent a messenger to Jesus to get Jesus to come to heal him. But the messenger arrived too late, and Jesus had been risen from the dead and was gone. So then the disciples said, well, we will take this cloth and go pray for the man. So because it was a burial cloth, they didn't want to desecrate the king's palace. And so they decided they would fold it into a cloth and make it into just a headshot and put a frame and a border around it. And then they were going to present it and in its presence pray for this king. So they did that. And they did that to show the king, the presence of the Lord and the face and image of Christ, and to pray with him, and the king was miraculously healed. So that's how it ended up in the Byzantine Empire, was that it was taken there. And then the Knights of Templar found it in the 14th century and returned it to France. And then the Chauvinets died and gave it to the Catholic Church. Okay, and so the Catholic Church has preserved it. Okay, now, I said all that to say this, that you see, this according to science can be proven to be in Jerusalem in the Byzantine Empire, to match the text of independent national recording of events, and then also to be documented to be in France and in Turin by this botanist. So the science is spectacular. Okay, now they did all kinds of tests of this thing, and okay, and well, now let me get back to Mark right quick, and y'all be patient with me because I'm covering a lot of ground here, and I'm trying to do it as efficiently as I can. Mark, if you would check out the link on this, so that you on this page, and then you can see all the evidence that support this. But there's more than one video, and I'm only discussing the first video on this page, and so. And I want you to understand, sir, and there's no problem with questioning, and I suppose it would be possible, but that wouldn't be significant if that was true. But they took it to 30 A.D., the first century A.D. Jerusalem is the way the scientists stated it on there. Now they took this; it's actually a negative. In other words, if you look at it, there's no page to it. I mean, there's no print to it. It's not a positive image, it's a negative image like you have on a camera. Okay, like if you take a picture, it's a negative in the film in the back. Okay, and so you have to use then something to turn it into a positive. And so that's what happened in the early 30s is that Italian photographer took a picture of it, and then he developed a film, and it turned into a positive image then, because he took it from the negative into the positive using a camera. He reversed it. And so now there's no paint in it. There's no pigment, no form of paint or pigment in it. And the actual image into the cloth is a nanomite. It's so small that there's no brush strokes, there's nothing that has been put on the cloth, there's no pigment on it, no paint pigment of any kind. And it appears to be a radiation burn as defined by a captain in the U.S. Air Force that studied it in the 70s. It appears to be a radiation burn. the resurrection, in other words. And now in the cloth is the hands that are pierced, and the knee where he fell with the cross, and scrapes on his back where he was, across his shoulders where he was carrying the beam that he had to carry of the cross, and the stripes that are on his back. And then one went as far, and you'll see it on these videos, as to take an ancient Roman cat of nine tails, which is basically a stick, like a billy club almost, with several strands of rope out of it, and embedded in the rope is small, like what we would call sinkers for fishing, if you was a fisherman. And the sinkers would be at intervals, and they would fillet the skin, and they would rip out the flesh as they were torn back. And you can take, they have an authentic Roman cat of nine tails, and they laid it right on top of this image of these wounds, and they match perfectly as to the stripes that were on his back. So he has that, and then he has the feet pierced. Okay, and so all the wounds of the New Testament are on this image. Okay, now we're going to take it further, and it gets better because I got some more modern stuff on it. This is 1978 film, The Silent Witness, and that's the first one you want to watch. All these videos together will take about 3 hours, and you don't want to watch them back to back because it'll be information overkill. But you can pick them up as you want to. Okay, and so first one. Now, I must admit and tell you up front that there was a problem with carbon dating on the 1978 test. Basically, a tremendous number of scientists went over to Turin, Israel, or Italy, and by the grace of God, the Italian government and the Catholic Church wanted them to run tests on this cloth. So they did all kinds of tests. They ran ultraviolet, they did acid tests, they did every kind of test you can think of. And all the tests come back positive. And then also they took a reproduction of the shroud to a medical coroner in the city of Los Angeles in the late 70s, and he looked at all the wounds and said that they matched the crucifixion exactly, and that all the wounds were accurate. And one of the points he made is that if you drive a nail through the center of your hand, it'll pull your thumb inside your palm, and that there was that his palms were pulled, his thumbs were pulled in on both hands, so they had driven the nails through his hands, you see, and it pulled the thumbs in. So we had all these tests done and all this science done, and it all measured up, and they used 3D imaging software to show that it's not a surface image, that it is a digital image, and it has 3D characteristics, so that it shows the curves of his features, and that it wasn't a painted flat object. It was a biometrical 3D impression that was on the cloth. It's 3D, and they proved that using Air Force equipment at the Air Force Academy. So here we got all this tons of stuff that says that this is the real deal. And then they come back and they said that the carbon dating test was wrong and that it was 14th century. Okay, so that dampened it. In 1978, the world was on the edge wanting to hear how real this was, and it was real, and they got down to one test, the carbon dating test. They had a problem with it. And so the problem was that they took a tainted sample to test, and the tainted sample went to like Oxford and to several colleges, Cambridge. It went to the University of Arizona. Now we're going to center on the University of Arizona. And University of Arizona was a very fine thermal engineer that was testing it, and he was testing the cloth for its carbon dating signature. And he swore up and down it's 14th century. And he stuck to his guns. That's the way it was, 14th century. And so it was absolutely authentic that was the findings of the carbon dating issue. and it created a question mark on the cloth. But now here in the 20th century, 21st century, we have got a new video that has come out. And the video shows where this dear woman in New Jersey happened to look at the fiber of the textile cloth and found where that the weaving of the cloth didn't quite properly match. And so what it comes down to, simplified, is that there was a fire in the 14th century and the cloth almost got burned, and the nuns, being faithful to the shroud, took the shroud and repaired it and dyed the cloth and put it back looking normal again. And that they had clipped the corner of the cloth where the repair work was done. And that's why the carbon testing showed up, is because they had took 14th century cotton and interwoven it with 1st century silk, and it threw the test. So they went back to the same scientist at in Arizona, and he had a buddy. Well, he tested it and found that it was absolutely accurate. Looking at it that way, that was answered the question about the carbon dating. And then he had another buddy, a friend of his, to take the remaining little portion of cloth that he had, and using modern day equipment at Los Alamos, his friend at the Los Alamos laboratories went back and confirmed that it was in fact 1st century cloth. So the carbon dating issue then has been solved. And it was no question to start with. It was just a tainted test. And that happens when you test things scientifically. They can be parameters and variances that will cause errors. And that was the error in the carbon dating. Now, let me take it from there if you would. So if you go to the page that we've mentioned and you read it and you click this first link that says you have to watch it on V-mode, you get the 1978 version. It tells everything I've just talked about, including, but it ends on a sour note that the carbon dating wasn't right. Okay, then the second video is called The Shroud of Turin, Amazing Proof of the Resurrection of Jesus, picks up the study in our modern times. And it shows about the scientists in Arizona. It shows about the textile thing and how she contacted the textile industry, and they confirmed her findings, and that she made enough noise that the scientists got back involved, and he validated the cloth, and it's carbon dated.